Hello, and welcome to the Media Pen at the 2025 Miami E-Prix. I am joined by Jack Smith. I'm obviously Jack Giordmaina, and Jack Smith is from Motorsport Week. How are you, first and foremost, and how did you find the race, first and foremost?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, it was a fantastic race. It was a weird one. We expected it to be a peloton race. We expected it to be highly chaotic, but maybe from the start. But it petered out into quite a boring affair right up until the sort of just into the second half of the race when it all started to kick off as we expected it would. And that's when you can't take your eyes off it.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, we had the red flag, right? And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to speak to either Gunther, Evans, and whoever was Hughes that was caught up in the incident. But obviously, that brought out the red flag, and that completely changed the race because Da Costa, who we'll get on to in a minute, obviously was dominating that race. But Verline had that attack mode and luck was on his side. He had 4 minutes to go, and that led him to sort of win the race, not on the road though, but eventually win the race.
Yeah, I mean, Pascal was a beneficiary really of the red flag, and we've seen that so many times in Formula E. We saw it in Brazil when Mitch Evans came through and did it. As Pascal said in the press conference afterwards, he was kind of a victim of the efficiency of that Porsche powertrain because he took all his attack mode and he had so much left in the tank, and had we not had the red flag, I'm sure he would have coasted along to finish it off, just like he did in Shanghai when we had a similar sort of race. But I think for Porsche it was bounce back ability. They really needed it after the disappointment of Jeddah, and Antonio, being the sort of philosophical chap he is, I think will already start to digest it and realise that he's very much eaten back into the championship lead that Roland had, and with Barnard as well ahead of him. So he's in a good position, and for Pascal, it's just a perfect way for him to finally get his season kind of back on track and actually get it kick-started.
Indeed, and obviously Pascal's kind of said, he's had his fair share of bad luck, and he was just hoping for his luck to change, and today it was that. Annoyingly, you may argue that, in Formula E that there is just a lot of luck in terms of who's winning these races, but it's part of the game, it's part of the parcel, and I suppose that's why we love the series.
Well, yeah, because in any sort of race, something might happen. It triggers a safety car, it triggers a red flag, and it just throws, it throws a grenade into what is happening in the race. And from then on, the result is going to completely change. And all drivers suffer from it, the good and bad of it. We saw Antonio suffered a lot for good and bad last year. We saw Nick Cassidy did as well, and we saw Pascal benefit, from it eventually in the end. And we saw it today. He benefited today, and I think that whilst Porsche have got the ascendancy, I think we can see now that they have got the best package. The Nissan one is still very strong, and they can't put all their eggs in one basket. They know that there is so much competition behind them, even though that they are out and out the fastest.
Of course, right. Let's hear from Pascal Verline, who was speaking in the post-race press conference.
Yeah, it feels great, even though it was a bit of a lucky win. Feels great. I think, somewhere on the podium or the top 5 would have been possible otherwise, but still, I think we had enough bad luck this season that we can also be lucky for once. So we take that, very happy about it. Strategy was good. Obviously, it was crucial to only have the 4 minutes of attack mode left after the red flag, which we luckily had. Some of the others still had 6 minutes to do. That saved us, and we go from here. Hopefully our season kicks off now.
Right, on a positive note, Lucas Di Grassi back on the podium for the first time in 2 seasons. Bit of a shock, but the pace was there. Like in free practice, he was quick, and then in qualifying, all of a sudden, he was again quick again. Like, how amazed or surprised are you with Lucas Di Grassi in terms of his performance this weekend?
Well, it shows the old hand knows how to do it still. I think there probably were some doubts about whether he still has enough in the tank to be a top-level Formula E driver. And, of course, as you said, luck comes into it with these sort of races, but the pace was there in that Lola car. We saw it over one lap, and you could say, well, other cars maybe weren't, or other drivers weren't giving it their all in qualifying because they knew that it wasn't as necessary to get a good grid position. But he still had to put a good lap in, and he did that, and that put him in a very good position in the race, as it turned out. And the energy efficiency of that Lola powertrain is still a bit down on other people's, but it shows that they've done so much good work in just a year. We just remember that the Gen 3 Evo came into Lola's possession this time a year ago.
Yeah.
And in that time, they've been able to, with a bit of luck involved, they've been able to make a car that can actually get onto the podium. And that's a very, very big achievement. And I think, putting the sort of the early seasons aside, where everyone started from scratch, this is one of the biggest achievements, I think, for any sort of nascent team.
100%. Is it one of those, like, in terms of experience? Because a lot of drivers say Formula E teams like experienced drivers, and I feel like with the peloton style races now, you need that experience, because as a rookie it's kind of tough. Like Zane, he's done a good race. Unfortunately for him, finished 10th, but got the 5-second penalty for cutting the chicane, so pushed him all the way back to 19th, so he doesn't get that point. But with De Grassi having that experience, he was able to go up and finish in second place and use that know-how.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've seen how good Zane is, and we've seen how well he's been able to adapt to this series very, very quickly. But as you say, Lucas knows exactly what's going on. Even the drivers that don't particularly like the peloton style, some I think prefer it as opposed to others. But whether Lucas likes it or not, he knows how to cope with it. And we saw in the last couple of seasons, we've not been able to see his sort of nous at it, because he's just not had a competitive enough package to make anything work in any conditions. We saw in Jeddah that they had the strategy of the safety car, going ahead, taking attack modes early, and it didn't work out. This weekend, everything seemed to get into their hands, and regardless of the penalty, Zane did actually put it in the top 10 in the end. So I'm sure he's learning a little bit from Lucas as well. But I think, the experience of Lucas and the intelligence of Lucas as a driver and as a person, as well as the experience that comes with that, is invaluable to this team as it moves forward.
Of course, right. So let's hear from Lucas De Grassi.
Today in FP2, when you look at the real results, in 300 kilowatts, we were one of the fastest. So I had the fastest first sector, the fastest third sector. So the car, we improved a lot, the car from yesterday, from today. And in the groups, we were there. So we managed to put a lap together. We were P2 in the group stage. So the pace of the car has improved. And in the race, we still struggled a bit. The car still needs to improve a lot. But we managed to stay there, and the luck was on our side a bit when the safety car came the way it came. But I was there. I was in P3, and I used the luck to deliver the first podium for the team. So I'm very, very pleased.
Right, we have to talk about Antonio Felix da Costa, because, all right, these peloton races, for me, he's mastered them. Now let's go back. Misano, brilliant. Shanghai, brilliant. And he comes today 3% up on everybody else. And that final attack mode, without the safety car, he would have gone on and won that race by a country mile. Obviously that didn't happen. The safety car came out, the red flag, and he lost that 6 minutes of attack mode, and it goes away from him. But that's the luck of the draw. But it could have been a lot worse. As he said, he could have taken it a bit later, but he was talking about a safety margin, so he obviously didn't go into the gaps that the others did a little bit later on. But it's kind of like it's the luck of the draw. It's a bit hard. It's a bit hard done by. What do you think?
Well, yeah, he knows what's what, Antonio, and as angry as he evidently was, I think that he's philosophical enough to know exactly how this championship can play out.
Yeah.
And he knows full well exactly what to do this year in order to get himself back at the front. Because we saw last season what happened was that once he got on that very good run, it was either all or nothing. And a lot of that through no fault of his own, but he won more races than anyone else, but ended up P5 in the championship.
Yeah.
He knows this season, and he said it to me in pre-season about how it's just a case of picking up all the points when you can. And he's been leading the Drivers' Championship without even winning a race yet.
Yeah.
Whereas before he won a race last season, he was nowhere. He was down an hour, and they were testing Nico Muller.
Yeah.
So this season, he's maximising every opportunity he gets. He's had 2 P2s. He's now got a P3 after a difficult weekend in Jeddah. So he knows that he knows how to bounce back. He knows where to take the positives. And of course, Monaco is a track he knows well. He's won it before. So we shouldn't discount him out. Even though, Pascal has a win and that gives him a bit of momentum, and it certainly gives him a foothold in the championship fight now. there's no way you can write Da Costa off.
Yeah, of course. And obviously with Roland and Barnard not scoring this weekend, then actually Roland gets a point now because of Maloney's penalty, but still a low score. So he's taken 14 points off Roland this weekend. So it's brought him right back in the championship race. So even though it's a disappointing outcome in terms of the long-term goal of the championship, it's brought him right back into play.
Absolutely. We always knew that Roland was going to be kind of in the mix this year, and I think a lot of people felt that Antonio was going to be in the mix after the form that he did show in those races where he did win. And as you say, he's mastered tracks like this, or races like this rather. So I think that him and Oliver will be at the front pretty much all the way through, unless there's a particular bad run of luck for one or both of them. But I think that. I think that Da Costa and Roland are going to be... It always kind of seems like the two Renaissance men of Formula E were always going to be the ones that were going to be in a really good position this year for the championship.
Okay, let's hear from Antonio Felix Da Costa.
I see my loss of win in a very different way than what I see these guys getting penalties, because I could have delayed, I could have taken my attack mode later, but I take a buffer on safety, on a margin to not be, surprised by safety car. I guarantee to myself that I will use all of my attack mode until the race is over, because that is the rule, right? What we did very right today was we were so up on energy to everyone that I was going to do a 4 minute and 4 minute, and therefore it would have been okay today, because I would have taken it after the red flag. But because we were so good on energy, I could do a 2 and 6, and I wanted that 6 at the end to really pull away and go win the race, which we executed that plan. And when the safety car came after, I don't know, I did half a lap with it or whatever, or 1 lap with it or whatever. Yeah, that was, I knew straight away that was the end, but I also knew the guys that had 6 minutes to take, and they gambled on leaving really, really late, that they were going to be done.
Okay, right, we've got to talk about what happened in the race in terms of the attack mode, and the drivers that had 6 minutes left. And obviously Norman Nato, right, has had a very difficult start to the season with luck, and luck again wasn't on his side. Obviously he finished the race first on the road, but obviously he knew he got a penalty, got a 10-second penalty, which was actually, I think, quite good in a sense. It drops him down to 6th place, so he still takes away his best finish of the season. But I want to know your thoughts on the rules in terms of attack mode. I know at the moment, if they don't take it, then they get a penalty. But a lot of talk in the paddock has been about, well, is it a disadvantage if I don't use the full amount? Like, well, I could have used more, I could have gone further, but I couldn't. So that's tough luck on me. Why should I get penalised for that?
Yeah, I mean, some of the drivers, I'm sure, and Norman may be one, he's entitled to have the sort of, the woe me attitude, because he's had a really great weekend. He's been the strongest Nissan driver. He's actually been able to sort of outperform Ollie this weekend, which is a first for this season. But some drivers, I think, are quite accepting of the way the regulations are. Taylor Barnard was very much like that. He said to me in the pen after the race that the rules are the rules. It's just the way it goes. There's so many things that can happen in Formula E, and I think ultimately that probably is the way it's going to be. Whether there's going to be growing discussion now about if there's can be any tweaks to the rules or anything like that, I'm not really sure. I think it will be a bit of discussion as we head into Monaco, or maybe once we're in Monaco. But I think ultimately, a lot of drivers will just be accepting of the fact that one day it can go your way and then another day it can't.
Yeah, I suppose that is a really good point, because I was just thinking now really as terms of like the penalties, what you can do is if it's a normal race with no safety cars or red flags, then yeah, maybe it makes sense. But if there's a red flag involved, it's not like, there's nothing you can do, because the drivers also lost an extra lap, going to the grid, right? So they couldn't take the attack mode lap on that lap either. So there's another lap that's gone without it. So it's, all of a sudden all their hard work sort of gone down the drain in a sense, because they can't even take it on the next lap, because that lap also counts going to the grid before the standing starts. So they were really they were caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that despite the fact that this is the longest track on the calendar this year, that they might have added just 1 lap to compensate for it, but they decided not to. And again, I think drivers could be a little bit aggrieved by that, because I expected there to be at least 1 added on. So
From the first safety car period.
Yeah, and I think that is probably where maybe the drivers ought to have the most the most grievance
It's
when it comes to it.
It's because it's done on time. So if they allowed the time to maybe elapse just a little bit further, without, I don't know how far it was, but basically it's done on time, right? So the longer you are behind the safety, it's not about laps, how many laps. It's the longer the time that you are compensates the laps. Basically, that is the thing. So obviously it was quite a short safety car period because it wasn't long before they brought the red flag out. So then it kind of makes sense why there was no added laps. But if they just allowed the safety car to go a little bit longer, maybe then would have been a bit of time to add that extra lap on, and maybe we wouldn't have been in this sort of situation where Nato crosses the line and he's won the race, but we've got all these post-race penalties.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think they as I say, I think maybe that's the one area that could be looked at. It's just a case of having that little bit of adaptability in order for the drivers to maybe not be in this predicament. You can say, oh well, they should have taken them earlier, but
yes,
it's all about risks in this championship
100%.
because risks are born out of the unpredictability of it, and drivers are largely accepting of that because that is just the nature of the beast that is the championship.
Yep, and that's what Da Costa was so upset about, because they were racing with no risks to make sure that he was in the buffer, but by racing with no risks, it's cost him a win at the same time. So let's hear from Norman Nato, Taylor Barnard and Sam Bird on their thoughts on their race.
People doesn't really realize, because if you only look at points, for sure, like it's you can easily say like it's not a good beginning of the season, but it's not like what we showed today. It's of course I did pole, so it's a bit more obvious. But in Sao Paulo, I went to the duels. At some point, I took the lead as well and got a penalty. So yeah, like honestly, like we have pace in the beginning of season. Obviously, like I knew it's going to be difficult, like as a comeback in the team. Even if I know Nissan, I still have a new structure around me. So it takes a bit of time compared to this guy like Antonio and some of the people who's been in the same team, same car for 2 or 3 years, the same race engineer. Of course, it's difficult to straight away fight with them, I would say, and we did today. So just show, like, as I say, like in Sao Paulo already, we're able to be top 5, if not podium, and today we're in a position when we can step by step start to do even better than that. So now I'm really pleased with today.
Yeah, disappointing result, but I think the team and myself can still hold our head up high. We've had great pace, great efficiency, and I was in P5 at one point with a good amount of energy. So while the result is disappointing, I don't think we can be completely disappointed with our work this weekend. The car has been good, so yeah, a side of two halves, I guess.
With the current way that the car works, with all-wheel drive being so powerful, isn't it penalty enough that I didn't get to complete it and move forwards anymore? It's like penalising a team for something that they didn't do wrong. But I get the rules are rules, and it's the people that didn't fall foul of it will be saying it's absolutely the right thing, they should be penalised, and then there's people like myself who are thinking that we've been hard done by. But look, rules are rules. I can't change it for today. What I can say is I'm extremely proud of my team. I think that we actually had a really decent race to come from P19 up to P5, and that's what I'll remember from this race.
And that is all we have time for. What, in terms of Miami, how much have you just enjoyed it? Like, I've really enjoyed my time. It's been a wonderful couple of days.
Yeah, I think it's been great. I mean, I think as far as the championship is concerned, it's not been ideal location-wise. This is not Miami. This is a 45 minute drive away from the centre of the city, which is, it's not ideal because this is a city centre championship. But I kind of feel like that this is a temporary home whilst they look for something a bit more permanent. Whether that's Phoenix, whether they do go into Miami if they're able to, like they did for the Evo sessions. But ultimately, it's been a really entertaining race. I've really loved the experience of being at a speedway, and the fact that it's so out of Formula E's comfort zone. In that sense, it's a track that is just a completely different monster to what we're used to. But yeah, I think it's been further evidence, regardless of the pros and cons. It's further evidence that we need an American home on the calendar. 100%.
Monaco next up. What are you looking forward to there? Obviously, tight, twisty track. Potentially a peloton, but obviously Jaguar dominated it last season, and I assume if the team can, they'll try and emulate that kind of strategy.
Absolutely, and I think what's also interesting is the element of the fact that we're going back to pit boost.
Yep.
And I think the nature of how we saw pit boost in Jeddah could play into the hands of people that have done pit stops in things like F2 races. So the likes of Zane and Taylor, actually the pit stops are similar in the sense that what we saw in Jeddah was largely the drivers that pitted came back out and the sort of positions evened themselves out. So I think there's an angle there where they could use that little bit of experience where some drivers have either lost it or are not used to it anymore. So that's one element. I love the fact that we're racing twice because it's nice to see racing. I get the point that drivers saying that maybe the winner of Monaco, it needs to be an outright in terms of one winner, and I do understand that, but to see the cars go around twice is in a weekend is fantastic. And also I think it helps Formula E's position that they are a growing series. The fact that the Prince of Monaco is quite happy to allow them to close the country down for 2 days rather than one.
Exactly. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Right, so please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. We're getting really close to 1,000, so just help it if you've enjoyed this show. Please hit that button. I've been Jack Giordmaina. This has been Miami, and we'll see you in Monaco. Goodbye.